There definitely were some additions to the show that I didn't really care for, but this scene is not one of them. I loved it. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Faith, and thank you so much for watching. It is finally time for the off-campus book versus TV show comparison. As always, this video will contain spoilers, so if you haven't read the book and watched the show, I probably would save this video for later. Assuming you have read the book and watched the show, you probably know that they are very different. As always in the series, I do want to focus more on the differences than the similarities, and if we went through every single difference between the book and the show, we would be here for like 12 hours. So I went through and picked 20 of the major differences I noticed while watching the show that we are going to discuss today. And for the most part, everything will be talked about in order that it happened in the show. And I have one more thing to say before we jump into it. Season 1 of Off Campus was supposed to focus on the Deal, aka Garrett and Hannah's story. Assuming you've watched the show, you know that a good chunk of the last half of this season did focus on Dean and Allie. But because this season was supposed to cover the Deal, I'm not really gonna touch on their relationship much. Just want to throw that out there. Whenever their season does come out, then of course I will be focusing on their relationship. But again, the season was supposed to be the Deal, so I'm mainly focusing on the Deal with like 1 or 2 exceptions. And without further ado, let's get into it. Unlike the book, where Hannah only works at Della's diner, in the show, she's working multiple jobs. The very first scene in the show is Hannah working at the stadium cleaning up after the guys, and then we see her working at the stadium again during a game, and then of course she works at Malone's, the diner and bar. So while in the book Malone's and Della's diner are 2 separate things, the show just combined them. And she does mention to Logan that she's working 3 minimum wage jobs, however, I'm not really sure what the third one is. I don't remember it ever being mentioned, and then as far as we see, it's only her working at the stadium and then at the diner bar, unless she was counting tutoring Garrett as one of those jobs. Hannah's music life is also different in the show. In the book, she literally majors in vocal performance, and in the show, there was a line where she literally said she isn't a performer. In the show, I don't remember her exact major, but it was something like classical composition, and she wanted to be a film composer. And then they also changed what the showcase was. In the book, I'm pretty sure that it wasn't optional, but it was just whoever does the best gets the scholarship. And then in the show, it was like an optional competition to win a scholarship. In both the book and the show, she still needed to win the showcase because she needed that scholarship money. They just went about it different ways. Honestly, I did like her music life better in the book. However, I will say I really liked the addition of the teacher slash advisor in the show. I just really liked his character, and honestly, a character like that would have been nice for Hannah in the book. Speaking of music, let's talk about Justin and Cass. In the book, there's this dude named Cass, and Cass, take off the C, that's what he is. He's her duet partner, and he's very much just trying to take over the entire song, really. His character did not exist in the show at all. But actually, he kind of did, because they kind of turned Justin into Cass. In the book, Justin is a football player, and in the show, he's a musician and the lead singer of After Hours band. I will be honest, I kind of liked that he was changed into a musician. I honestly think it's more accurate to Hannah's character for her to like a musician rather than a football player. In the book, he definitely wasn't a nice guy. Garrett pointed out at one point that, you know, he's going after, to his knowledge, another guy's girl. Is that really the type of guy you want to be with? So he's definitely somewhat of a douche in the books. However, in the show, at first, honestly, I was kind of fine with him, but then as it went on, I really started hating him. And like I said, they definitely put some of Cass's personality into Justin. I don't really know how I feel about that specific change to Justin's character in the show, but again, I did like him being a musician rather than a football player. But let's start talking about Garrett Graham. The first game that we got to see them play in the show, Garrett isn't doing so great. During one of the breaks between periods, he storms out of the locker room and ends up stumbling upon Hannah singing "The Bitch Is Back" by Elton John in the green room. First of all, I actually need to stop saying literally anything and just say the soundtrack in this show was incredible. But back to the scene. This scene isn't in the book at all. I loved when Garrett Graham came up to that window and he was looking in and he was still raging, you know, because he's still focusing on the game. I loved seeing his face go from rage to just calm. And then later when he confessed to Hannah that he saw her and he was like, "You centered me." You're kidding. Garrett Graham, I love you. We didn't get "Baby, I could watch you watching paint dry and I still wouldn't be bored," but we did get that. Still would have loved the paint drying quote though. There definitely were some additions to the show that I didn't really care for, but this scene is not one of them. I loved it. And then we have Jules and the Fifth Line. This is another thing that isn't in the book at all. I will admit, Jules' character definitely did grow on me throughout the season, but I'm still not really a fan. Apparently, the showrunner said that Jules' character was added basically just to narrate the hockey games because the showrunner was concerned that people wouldn't understand what was happening. I don't know if that's the exact quote, I just saw that paraphrased from other people. I felt that was kind of obvious considering every single time they played a game, Jules would be in the back basically narrating what was happening. As somebody who understands hockey, I didn't like that Jules was added just because of that. That being said, maybe I would feel differently if I didn't understand hockey, but I do think it's kind of weird to give a main character a sibling just because somebody needs to narrate hockey, especially considering if you add the time that they were playing games throughout the entire season, it probably was less than 5 minutes. But then also to have Jules run a gossip account, I feel like those characters would not be cool hanging around with a person who is running a gossip site about them, regardless of whether that person is related to one of them or not. I will admit, I am a bit worried about how it's going to play into Logan and Grace's season, because I want Logan and Grace's season to be about Logan and Grace. I don't want this side character who I don't really care for, to kind of overtake their season. That being said, not gonna worry about that till we're there. And who knows, at that point I might like the character more, so right now I'm kind of just trying to stay open and a bit optimistic about it. Kendall also had a bit of a larger role in the show than she did in the book. In the book, she's pretty much only in that one scene towards the beginning where her and Garrett hook up, and then she's like, oh, I want more, I missed you so much, and he's like, girl, no, goodbye. And that scene actually was in the show, and I think Garrett was actually way more respectful about that in the show than he was in the book. However, in the show, she randomly popped up quite a bit. Like, she had a role in the drunk Shakespeare part where she got on stage and was being a little jealous and rude to Hannah. Honestly, I don't really know why the show gave her a bigger part, especially considering that after Garrett realizes he has feelings for Hannah and then Kendall tries to hit on him, he immediately shuts it down. And then after that, we don't really hear from her anymore. So that kind of just didn't make sense to me. And then we have the costume party from episode 2. It was Dean and Beau's birthday party, and they wanted everyone to come as a dynamic duo because a duo is 2 and it's their 22nd birthday. There isn't a costume party in the book, however, the equivalent of this scene I think would be the Sigma party, aka the frat party. However, some parts of Dean's birthday party in the book, which takes place halfway through the book, also occurs in Dean's birthday party in the show, even though it's in episode 2. So a couple things were pulled earlier. Honestly, I did like the costume part of it. I thought that was really cute. Geese and Maverick is kind of crazy, cannot lie. So I guess we know one storyline they're not gonna drop. The thing I didn't like about this scene is that this is season 1, episode 2. Why are we introducing the Dean and Allie storyline? But I will touch more on that later. I just really wanted to talk about the costume party because I really liked the costume part of it. I thought that was fun. Hannah doesn't drink at parties because she was drugged. I really did not like how that was like completely brushed over in the show. When I said some things were done earlier in the show than they were in the book, this is what I was referring to. It took literally half of the book for her to trust Garrett enough to drink at a party in public, and I think that happening at the party in episode 2, like one of the first times they hung out, was crazy. But of course, Logan is a green flag. Closed drinks are safer. My king, I love him so much. But even though I loved that Logan moment, and I'm glad that Logan moment was in there, I just didn't like that change. Because she also never told Garrett the story of her friend being drugged. In the show, instead of telling Garrett that, she had told Allie previously. So in a way, that was still in there, but I really just wish that would have been with Garrett. Again, I loved that Logan moment, but I just wish that would have came way later. Like, at least push that to episode 3. At least. Hannah didn't kiss Dean. Hannah didn't kiss Dean. I'm gonna let you sit with that for a second. She kissed Logan. Yeah. I'm assuming that this change was made because obviously Logan has a crush on Hannah, but like, that's part of the reason I don't like the change. Dean thinks Hannah's hot. There were literally never any feelings between the two. Logan actually has a bit of a crush on Hannah. I think having him kiss Hannah is just hurtful. I love Logan. I say this all the time. Garrett Graham is my number 1, of course. Logan is my number 2 and I don't want him hurt. I love him so much and I feel protective over him because he's like everybody's least favorite. Not mine, guys. Never mind. I just wish it was Dean. I really just wish that it was Dean. Oh, but they couldn't make it Dean because at that point, the Dean and Allie storyline had already started. I'm just really bummed. I'm really bummed that it was Logan and not Dean. You know what? The substitution was better than not having the scene in there. I will say that. In my opinion, I'd rather have her kiss Logan than no one. Which kind of sounds weird, I guess. I just wish she kissed Dean, guys. And now we're going to jump into a much more heavy topic. Hannah's essay. I really feel like it was downplayed quite a bit in the show. Part of that comes from the drinking thing. Like I said, in the book, it wasn't until halfway through that she trusted Garrett enough to watch over her while she was drinking in public, and that happened less than 25% into the show. But then also, the way that she said it. Obviously, even if you hadn't read the book, it wasn't hard at all to piece together what had happened to her. In the show, the first time she says that she was raped, she just literally has Garrett completely brush over it. She's literally just like, I'm gonna tell you something and then you're not gonna process it at all. You're just gonna move on and do this other thing that I need you to do for me. And in doing that, that also doesn't let the audience process that. She kind of says that she's, you know, accepted it, moved on, that's not her. But then what we see from her doesn't show that. And I really feel like that was just kind of downplayed. In my opinion, the only time it's not downplayed in the show is when she realizes that Aaron is going to be playing Garrett. But other than that one scene in the show, I really feel like it was downplayed the rest of the time. I've seen other people agree that it was downplayed in the show. I haven't seen somebody disagree with that or say the opposite. I thought the progression of her leading up to saying it was fine. Again, that one scene with Aaron is kind of the only time I feel like they didn't downplay it. And of course, that is my opinion. You do not have to agree with that. But moving on to lighter topics, we're going to talk about the Dean and Allie storyline. I know at the beginning of this video, I literally said, we're going to focus on the deal with a few exceptions. This is one of the exceptions. Because their storyline took up such a big chunk of the last half of the season, I kind of can't not talk about it. I'm going to say right now, I don't dislike Allie and Dean. I love Allie and Dean. I do think the way I've talked about them kind of comes off that I don't. I do. But Garrett and Hannah are my favorite couple in the series, hands down, no question. And they're also like one of my favorite book couples of all time. So I don't really like that their season felt overshadowed in the last half. In the books, their relationship doesn't start until the year after Hannah and Garrett's. But as we all saw, it happened the same year. Again, not hating on them. I know they're most people's favorites, but I wanted my favorites to have their moment. We already got Allie and Sean breaking up, Dean and Allie hooking up, Dean confessing his feelings for Allie. And we're in season 1. Again, I do love Allie and Dean, guys. However, this does concern me with the book to show accuracy that we're gonna have for the rest of the series. And I'm just gonna say right now, I want Logan and Grace to be season 2. I love Logan and Grace. Again, they're my second favorite couple behind Garrett and Hannah. And obviously, they're the second book. I wanted to follow the order of the books. But with how much Dean and Allie we got in season 1, I would be shocked at this point if they weren't season 2. At the end of the day, I love them all so much and I'm gonna eat this show up no matter what. But why have we gotten half of the Dean and Allie storyline in season 1? That is such a massive change from the books. Again, their relationship isn't until a year after Garrett and Hannah's, and now it's at the same time. Again, I love Dean and Allie, but that is all that I'm gonna say about that. And then we have something that broke my heart. Garrett and Logan had a bit of a falling out. There was some tension between the two for a little bit, mostly because Logan had a crush on Hannah and he was a little bit jealous of Garrett. And real quick, I'm really glad that his crush was still in there. I know a lot of people don't like that happened. I personally do, because it is really important to John Logan's character arc. But back to the falling out. Their falling out kind of started when Garrett didn't get an autographed jersey for Logan's fundraiser. And of course we, the audience, knows why, because they stormed out of Thanksgiving because his father's an abusive POS. But Logan didn't know that. And while I think that Logan had his suspicions about that, he didn't outright know it. Logan went behind Garrett's back and contacted Phil and got, I think, Rangers tickets and a meet and greet with Phil. And Garrett was upset because, again, his father is an abusive POS. Garrett, of course, gets pissed, but Logan really needed the money that would come from that for the fundraiser. In the moment, their fighting gets interrupted. However, they never really resolve that conflict, and that tension just keeps building and building and building until it snaps. Again, literally none of that is in the book, and I love their friendship so much, and I could have done without the addition of that. In the show, Garrett tries to convince Cindy to leave Phil, and she's like, no, I can't, it's complicated. And then after that, she comes to the game where Garrett got suspended, and then after that, we hear nothing else about her. However, in the book, we find out that she did actually end up leaving Phil. I really wish the show made it clear that she left him, because since it didn't, as far as we know, the cycle of abuse is still continuing with Phil Graham. In the show, Garrett fought Aaron on the ice. He absolutely beat the crap out of him. I'll say it, as he should have. In the book, sadly, there's never a confrontation with Aaron. However, Rob, one of Aaron's friends who testified against Hannah, does show up to a game, and Hannah kind of freaks out, rightfully so, and then Garrett goes and beats the crap out of Rob. While I love that scene in the book, I gotta be honest, I was actually really glad for the substitution. While yes, all of Aaron's friends who testified against Hannah are disgusting, I really just like that the justice was served against Aaron. I didn't really like what came from this scene in the show, but I did like that he beat up Aaron instead of Rob. Honestly, I would have taken them both, but if I had to choose between the two, I would choose Aaron. Because Garrett beat up Aaron on the ice unprompted according to the NCAA's rules, because let's be real, he had a pretty good reason to do so, he was suspended for 4 games. But I'm gonna come back to that in a moment. After he's suspended, he sees his dad in the hallway. His dad is like, oh, I'm so proud of you, that's some old school hockey. Listen, I love a good hockey fight as much as the next hockey fan, but sir. And that is kind of what Garrett finally needed to completely cut off his dad. He's like, I just got suspended for 4 games, and you're saying you're proud of me. And his dad's a psycho, so of course he's like, yeah. Honestly, I kind of didn't like how fast this scene concluded. However, I do think the conversation in the show is better than the conversation in the book, because there was no conversation in the book. In the very last chapter of the book, after him and Hannah reconcile, he is like, oh yeah, no, I'm done with my dad because I got my trust. Actually, his dad didn't deserve that conversation, so I kind of liked that there was no conversation in the book. But I definitely did like how in the show it was a bit more publicly humiliating for Phil. Granted, nobody was around them, but still he was in a public setting. In the show, after he cuts Phil off, he goes outside to the car to find Hannah waiting for him. He's like, get in the car, and she's like, no, what the hell was that? And then they get into this huge fight. And from that fight, he's like, Hannah, I'm not good for you. I'm breaking up with you. In the book, Hannah is the one that broke up with Garrett. Phil threatened Hannah and was like, I'm going to cut my son off and he will have nothing if you don't break up with him. I think that showed a whole different evil side to Phil Graham, and that just felt like a huge change, because then from that point on, pretty much everything has changed. Instead of Hannah breaking up with Garrett because she thought she had to in order to protect him, Garrett broke up with Hannah to protect her from himself, which just changed the entire trajectory of the rest of the deal. One of the main things that changed from Garrett being the one to break up with Hannah was the hands-off law. In the book, Garrett created the campus-wide hands-off law because he believed that Hannah didn't really want to break up with him. But in the show, because Garrett broke up with Hannah, that doesn't really work. So in the show, they changed it to where some of the freshmen on the team spread a rumor that any guy who tries to get with Hannah, Garrett will beat them up. Kind of like with the Hannah kissing Logan instead of Dean, I am glad that the hands-off law was in there in at least some capacity. However, that is like my favorite scene in the entire book, and I really wish that it wasn't changed. However, because of this change, we did get Garrett being like, no, I would never do that to you, you can be with whoever you want, which was a very green flag moment for him. And then we're back to Garrett's punishment for beating up Aaron. In the book, after beating up Rob, Garrett was suspended for 1 game because Hannah let him tell the coach why he did what he did, so he got a lighter punishment. However, in the show, Garrett is suspended for 4 games and he never tells anybody what happened to Hannah, which is good considering she never said that he could tell anybody. But not only was he suspended for 4 games, the entire team had to change their record to losing all 17 games. Earlier in the season, he joined a practice with the Boston Bruins Bruins, which apparently is against NCAA rules. So they said technically Briar was playing an ineligible player, so that is why their record got reset. That literally does not happen in the book at all. Honestly, I don't really like that change, and I'm really curious to see how it's going to affect the rest of the series, especially next season. And then we are back to Hannah's showcase. In the show, the showcase is like the climax in the final episode, and Hannah and Garrett's reconciliation comes right after the showcase. But in the book, quite a bit happens after the showcase. In the book, Garrett goes to the showcase even though they're still not together, and they don't reconcile after it. And it actually isn't until after the showcase in the book when Garrett makes the hands-off law. Cinematically speaking, it does make more sense for the showcase to be like their final scene. So I don't really mind that change at all, and I did like the scene in both the book and the show. And lastly, we have Hunter Davenport. Hunter isn't in the deal at all. He also has no beef with Dean. Dean is actually like his mentor, and he never hooks up with Allie. I really can't wait to find out where they're going with that, and I really hope that this means that we're gonna get the other Briar U couples. I know I wouldn't mind a spinoff for Briar U or Campus Diaries, or you know, let's just make Off Campus be like 11, 12 seasons, and so on, as long as L. Kennedy keeps writing these books. Knowing his story in Briar U, I'm not really sure how I feel about him already being in the show. However, I do like the inclusion of the main characters from Briar U, even though technically he is also in Off Campus. And in case we never get a spin-off series, I am glad that they're being included in Off Campus. And then just a few extra things. The show had no Breaking Bad. The show added this really long drunk Shakespeare scene. Hannah had 2 fantasies about hooking up with Justin. Hannah had a whole playlist for Justin called Crushing, and Justin opened her laptop to that playlist. There was an entire hurricane fundraiser, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, put on by the one and only John Logan. And in the show, there was this whole Friendsgiving thing, which heavily featured Tucker, and that was like the most we got to see of Tucker, so I did like that. And that is the book versus TV show comparison for Off Campus. And there are like 100 other things that I could mention, but this video would be way too long. I've seen very mixed opinions about the adaptation, but honestly guys, I absolutely loved it. Would I have loved for it to be more faithful to the books? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, I love Off Campus, I love these characters, and I loved the show. Regardless of whether season 2 is about Logan and Grace or Dean and Allie, I cannot wait, and I really hope they get renewed for season 3 and season 4, and that we get all of the spin-offs. Be sure to check out the other episodes in my series where I compare books to their film or TV show adaptation. And I think that is all that I have for you guys today. Be sure to like and subscribe and follow my Instagram and my TikTok, which are in the description below for more bookish content. I really hope that you guys like the adaptation, and if not, I hope you like season 2 better. Love you guys. Bye!